First and foremost, we want to thank you all for coming out this evening. We're going to get this program started, but before we get started, we definitely want to take a moment of silence for all the fallen 9/11 community, especially this week, Captain Barry Galfano of the NYPD. Again, thank you very much for coming out this evening. This is a very special public forum. We want to thank the New York State Laborers Health and Safety Trust. We want to thank the DC 37 and the Fealgood Foundation for putting this together, and the UFT for having us. Many people in this room for a great many years worked on getting the Zadroga bill passed. And on January 2nd of this year, we accomplished it. On January 3rd, many of us woke up and said, well, what does this mean? Okay? And since that time, we've tried to piece it all together. And approximately 2 weeks ago, we have our first real explanation of exactly how the Victims' Compensation Fund portion of the Zadroga bill will work. And that came from the proposed rules and regulations that the Special Master and the Department of Justice issued regarding the Victims' Compensation Fund. We were lucky enough to reach out to Ms. Birnbaum and speak to her and ask her to come and speak to the public about what these proposed regulations mean and have her explain where we are at this juncture. More importantly, the Special Master agreed to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and your questions regarding the proposed rules and regulations. The word proposed means proposed. She's still here to listen to the 9/11 community and work on the regulations moving forward as she sees fit. So we ask, and we are going to break this into 2 sessions tonight. Number 1 is the questions that were proposed on the Fealgood Foundation website. The foundation approximately 2 or 3 weeks ago asked for submissions, and we got nearly 200 submissions from the 9/11 community with questions for the Special Master. I put together a compilation of those questions and will be asking the Special Master those questions. And then following that presentation, we'll give the open floor to all of you in the audience. Tonight, again, is sponsored by the New York State Laborers Health and Safety Trust and DC 37 and the Fealgood Foundation. I'd like to ask the director of the New York State Laborers, Dr. Jim Milius, to come on up and say a few words.
Thanks, Sean, and welcome everybody. I'm going to sort of wear 2 hats, but I will be brief in both. The first is, as from the Laborers Union, we welcome you all. We're happy to host this. We want you to get the information, understand the program, and make sure that everybody gets fair and just compensation for what's happened to them as a result of their exposures at 9/11. So this is part of it. We can all learn and all get input into the process for the compensation fund part of the legislation. Another hat I wear is working with the medical clinics, and I chair the steering committee for the medical programs. And those programs under the new legislation are also being implemented, and the key implementation date for them is July 1st, this Friday. Now, those of you that are in the medical programs will probably see no immediate change. The medical programs will continue the same places you've been going to for care. There may be some changes along the way. We think for the better, and improvements and so forth, but the programs will continue. That's all being worked out. You all should be receiving, that are in the medical programs, will be receiving letters from NIOSH probably sometime next week that will just sort of welcome you to the program, provide some sort of basic information 800 number to call if you have questions or concerns. But those should all go forward, and continue to keep appointments, keep in touch with the doctors that are taking care of you, and so forth. So do that, and if you have questions or concerns, get in touch with the clinics, and then when you'll have the 800 number next week and be able to call. So keep those going, and then meanwhile, and you'll hear about the changes, and meanwhile let's move on and talk about the compensation program. So Sean, I'll turn it back over to you.
Health and Safety Director of the Health and Safety Department of DC 37, Ms. Lee Clark.
Good evening. Hi. I'm not going to take up a lot of time because we're very privileged to have the Special Master with us this evening. Thank you for being here. If we are lucky, perhaps before October 1st, we'll be able to have another forum if everything is not addressed this evening. There's a lot happening. Jim touched the surface. Stay in contact with each other. Communicate, ask questions, don't give up. Everybody here, and many others, we are working for you, we are working with you. Okay, thank you.
Our final sponsor of tonight's event, Mr. John Field, Fealgood Foundation President.
On December 22nd, 7 months ago, we passed a bill. Senator Gillibrand called it a Christmas miracle. As much as I love the senator, I disagreed. I call it hard work. Everybody came together. Just like on 9/11, we all came together. We rolled up our sleeves and we got this bill passed. It was an historic piece of legislation. But the bill's not perfect. And while everybody was jumping up and down that we got the bill passed, if you go back, you'll see I was quoted on saying we have a lot more work to do. Hence why we are here today, to ensure that everybody is taken care of under this bill. I have the utmost and complete faith in the new Special Master that she will do the best job she could possibly do. Dr. Melius, Susie from the AFL-CIO, Lee Clark from the DC 37, everybody's working diligently to ensure that the issues are addressed tonight and in the very near future. But you all have to get involved. You all send me emails and phone calls. You now have a chance to be heard. And you have to continue to be heard so these issues are ironed out when we get up and running in October. I ask tonight that we be respectful. I know you have a lot of anger and frustration, but you don't direct it at the Special Master. She is your friend, she's your ally, and she's trying to help you. We're here tonight as a fraternity of 9/11 responders, volunteers, and people in Lower Manhattan who were affected by 9/11. You are champions, and you will act like champions. Thank you. With that being said, I want to introduce Sheila Birnbaum.
Thank you, John. This is a great privilege for me to meet you. Since my appointment, I have been trying to meet as many people as possible, but I haven't been able to meet as many of the 9/11 communities as are here today. So this is a great honor for me and a privilege to have been chosen to be the Special Master. And I'm going to learn a lot about your lives. And I think before we talk about this bill, maybe you should find out a little about my life and what got me to this spot, because I think that will help give you some confidence that I'm going to try to do with every fiber in my body what is fair for all of you who have given so much to the city of New York and to each other. So I want to first of all thank all of the people who made the Zadroga bill possible. Our congressional staff, our two great senators, Senator Gillibrand and Senator Sheila, and our members of the House, whose staffs and themselves went to great effort to make this possible. It's Congresswoman Mahoney, Nadler, and King. These people and their staffs worked tirelessly, but it couldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened without all the people that were there lobbying. John Field, the union leaders that have been there for you, that have been out there, and all of you who went down to Congress. And this is not a perfect bill, but it's a bill we can all hopefully work with and make as good as possible to give as much compensation as we can to those who were really hurt, who gave their energies, their efforts, and their health to what happened in 9/11. So how do I come to this? I mean, why am I here? How was I chosen? What are the attributes I can bring to this really important issue? My first important attribute is I was born and bred in New York. I'm a New Yorker. I know what you're like. I've lived with all of you, one way or another, past you in the subways, past you on the streets. I grew up in the Bronx. I was one of 3 children. My father had a grocery store. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had dreams, like all of you have dreams for yourselves and your children. I went to Herman Ritter Junior High School. I went to James Monroe High School. I went to Hunter College in the Bronx. It was the city college. It was free. We went on strike when they raised the tuition to $24. Would you like to pay $24 today? I bet you would for your church. And then I did what everyone did who was a woman of my vintage. I went to teach in the public schools. I taught the 4th grade in the Southeast Bronx. And it was a great experience. I learned so much by doing that. But I also had a dream, and my dream as a young girl was to be a lawyer. And so I went back to law school after my 2.5-year stint, and I went to NYU Law School, and I became a lawyer. And I fulfilled my dream by doing every day what I hope you all can do in your lives and your children can do in your lives. And as a lawyer, I was a teacher. I taught law for 12 years at Fordham Law School and NYU Law School. And I have learned a lot about this area. I've been involved in settling very large cases, trying to give compensation to people. And sometimes we did it really right, and sometimes we didn't do it so right. But I learned a lot by that. And I'm going to try to take all those skills that I learned and bring it to this fund and this community. I can promise you several things. I can't promise you that you'll all be satisfied with the awards you get. I can't promise you that all of you will be eligible under this statute. But I can promise you that you'll be heard, that we will be fair, that we will be transparent, that you will know what's happening, that we want to hear from the community, and that we want to do the best we can with what we have to work with. So we need your help. We need your input. We put out our regulations, and these are called draft regulations, as John and Sean pointed out. And they're there for comments. And I know some of you have lots of comments. You've already caught me in the polls, and that's what I'm here for. I want to hear your comments. I want to hear your questions. Some of them I won't be able to answer today. We don't have this set up yet. We have the regs done. We have some ideas of what we need to do. We're hoping that we're going to be set up and running by the beginning of October. And the reason is we couldn't do it before that anyhow, because there's been no money given by the Congress until October. And I want to take you through some of what this bill does before we get into the general questions here, so you have an idea of what you can expect, what the bill gives us, and what the bill doesn't give us. And I and you all have an obligation. We have a statute, and we have to sort of stay within the words of the statute. We can't just throw the statute away, because Congress gave us the money based on what was in the statute. So some of the things that we have to do, I don't like doing any better than you do. And some of you are not going to be covered for some of the injuries you have. But that's because the bill has limitations. But within those limitations, we're going to work very hard at giving everyone a hearing, a fair shake, and the ability to get the compensation they deserve, because you are all the heroes. You are the people that were down there day after day, making it safer for the rest of us. And we honor that. And it is about time that the Congress did the same, and I'm grateful that I'm going to have an opportunity to try to make that happen. So let's talk a little about this bill and what it does, and then we're going to take a lot of questions. Some of the answers I don't have yet, because we are still moving in directions to try to find out those answers. Some of them will be able to answer straight out. Some of them are not so easy, but we're going to make an effort to do that. So let's look at what we have here. And before we go any further, the name of this act is the Zadroga Act. And it was named after Jimmy Zadroga, who died after the 9/11, who worked on the pile, and who was affected and died as a result of his injuries. And I was lucky enough to meet with his father, who was tirelessly advocating for this bill, and we're very fortunate that he's here today. I'd like to introduce you all to Mr. Birnbaum. Of spending some time with him, and it was a privilege. He's a very special person, and there are so many people in this community. So the act was signed, we know, by President Obama on January 2nd, and it was finally a recognition of all of the efforts that people had made and all of the latent injuries that people would have that had not been recognized previously. And as Dr. Milius, who has just been a terrific job and was one of the first people I met with who opened my eyes to a number of the issues and problems, pointed out to you, there are two parts to this. There's the medical treatment and monitoring part, we call it Title I, and the compensation part, which we call Title II. I'd like to just point out to you some of the issues in Title I. Because if you are not part of Title I, if you're not part of the medical monitoring and treatment program, and you are eligible, you should join it. You should become a part of it. And it's to cover treatment for physical injuries and mental health conditions. This is going to be very important. If you have a mental health condition, there is money for treatment now for at least 5 years through this fund. You can sign up for it, and it covers PTSD. Cancer is not listed as one of the injuries that are the presumed injuries under this particular title, which will provide treatment. And what it provides for is that there is a scientific advisory panel. In this panel, and procedures set up by Dr. Howard and Marsh, we will be looking at the issues of cancer very carefully and the connection of the cancers that people have to their exposure in the World Trade Center. And they will add conditions as we go along in this process. And you're going to see when I get to it that if they add a condition, we're going to add the condition to the compensation part, and you will be able to supplement your application, or you'll be able to put in a new application, and you will be able to get compensation for any of these injuries that are added by the Scientific Advisory Panel to the first type. That's not the only thing. We're going to look at that separately ourselves as well. But if they add it, we're definitely putting it on our list of compensable injuries. So it's important that you understand the connection between these two separate programs that was all part of the Zadroga Act. So what does this Zadroga Act do? It opens up what we call the Victims' Compensation Fund, the first fund that was closed in 2002. It builds on that. It builds on what Special Master Feinberg did so well in the first iteration of this. And we're building on that as well. So it's going to provide compensation for physical harm or injuries or death. And we're going to do this efficiently, and we're going to do it timely, because you've waited long enough. But there are problems with the bill that are going to affect how much money you're going to be able to get in the first 5 years, no matter how timely we are, and no matter how efficient we are. So let's look at the differences and how this is going to affect you. The first bill and the second bill both talk about you have to be present at the World Trade Center site or any other crash site, including debris removal sites. What this new bill does, it adds debris removal sites, it adds fresh kill, it adds the barges to the areas that are now included within the World Trade Center site. And we're going to talk in a minute about how we have expanded this site, the original site, which was basically the World Trade Center itself and anywhere that debris fell down. We have expanded that substantially, and we're going to show you where and how we expanded that. The timing has changed. You have to be at the World Trade Center for a very short period of time, at a very short period of time after the event and after the buildings came down. We have now expanded that because the statute has, and if you worked there or resided near the World Trade Center between September 11th, 2001 and May 30th, 2002, you will now be eligible to collect under this fund. And you're eligible if you cleaned up the debris, you're a uniformed police or fireman, you're a non-uniformed personnel, you're a community resident, or you're a volunteer. All of these groups of people are covered. Now, what's some of the downside we have? The first fund was an unlimited fund. They had as much money as they needed to settle the 2,000 some odd death cases and the 2,000 some odd personal injury cases. Just over 5,000 cases were settled in the first fund for over $7.5 billion. This fund only has $2.775 billion. So it's limited. And it only has $875 million that Congress has given us to give to the victims in the first 5 years. And I'll try to explain to you how it's going to have to work, or how the bill says it's going to work. And the other issue is that all our administrative costs come out of the fund. There's no separate money for that. So if we have very convoluted or difficult processes or lots of hearings, we're using up your money. We don't want to use up your money. We're going to make this efficient. We're going to let you sign up by websites We're going to create as much efficiency as we can, and that's why you'll see in our regulations, we cut out from the first fund meeting with people in advance. You'll get an opportunity to meet with us, with me, with my deputies, but that will happen after you get your award. If you don't like your award, you can appeal that to us, but we're going to try to do this in a way that we don't eat up your money with our administrative costs. And the other issue is, because it's limited, the bill tells us that we may have to prorate what we award you. We're going to give you an award. It's going to be a full award. But unfortunately, depending upon the number of people that apply and the amount of other awards, we may have to prorate the amount of that award based on the whole amount of money we have and all the people that are applicable. That's what the statute makes us do. Now that's what we're going to have to do depending upon the number of people that come and are eligible and get awards. What are the similarities? First, this fund, as the first fund, covers only physical harm or physical injuries. It is written into the statute. We cannot change it. That's what Congress intended. So people that only have mental conditions and no physical injuries are not covered by this statute. Nothing we did, nothing in the regs. This is in the statute. You have to show that physical injury or death was the result of the error of the whole 9/11 incident, and from the dust that was the dust storm and the debris that was the result of that. And I'm going to get back to that when we tell you where we had to geographically draw some lines, and I know there are a lot of you out here who think we drew it in the wrong place, and that's fine. We want to hear from you. We want to hear why you think we drew it in the wrong place and how we can draw it in a better place. What will you be able to collect on this? Your economic losses and your non-economic losses. If you have lost earnings, if you have benefits that you didn't receive, those are the kind of economic losses you can recover. And then there'll be an award for your non-economic loss, which we as lawyers call pain and suffering, and other issues that will be very important, and that will add to the amount of the award. Now this bill, like the first bill, says to us we have to take off from the award collateral sources. And these are things you received before. This may be pension payments of certain types, or death benefits, or government payments. And in addition, the courts and the statute says we also have to deduct any settlements you receive from any other case you brought. If you brought cases in the courts, then we're going to have to deduct from this award what you got before that. And it's fair, because this bill is not to make you more than whole, it's to make you whole. And that's what the bill provides. So, one of the things we've decided, and they're in the regs and we'd like to hear about from you, is if somebody applied to the first fund and they got an award. And remember, that fund was right after the event occurred. That doesn't mean you can't come back to this fund. That would be unfair. If you have a new injury that hadn't shown itself at that time, you can come back to the first, you can come back to this fund. We will look at the new injury again, and you can qualify to get compensation that you didn't get in the first fund. If we add injuries, you can come back and supplement and put in an application for the added injuries. If you were paid in the first fund and you didn't get permanent disability and your condition has become substantially worse, you can come back and file again, because we think that's a fair way of handling your claims. You didn't know the full extent at that point. Now you know it, and now we're going to let you supplement your first application. Now, this was a very hard decision for us, and I know there's a lot of people who think we created the geographic area eligible for compensation too large. Some people think we made it too small. You know, it's like Goldilocks. It's hard to get it just right. So we think we've got it right. We looked at lots of photographs and aerial photographs, and we looked at the testing, and we drew these lines, and it is on Reed Street. Now, if you think we got this wrong, tell us, write us. We want to hear from you. And if you maybe on the other side of the street and you have a claim, file it. There may be special circumstances that we are going to look at and see if you fit within these special circumstances. But these are lines we had to draw based on the scientific evidence we had available. What we have done in the regulations is we have taken all of the conditions, and we're going to show them to you, and you can get them off the website that we have, or look at the bill. We have taken all of the conditions that are the conditions that are being treated for in the Title I, in the medical treatment part, that are presumed injuries. They're presumed injuries that arise out of the 9/11 incident. And those are all going to be covered for compensation under this Act. And here they are. These are the injuries that will be covered. You don't have to review them right now. You have plenty of time to study them and to determine if you fit in within these injuries. Now, as I said, cancer is not listed on these injuries at this point. But we're going to look very hard at that issue. We're going to look at the scientific and medical evidence. We're going to talk to the experts. We're going to get experts. And if we believe that these can be related, we're going to add them to this list. And when we add it, you can come back and supplement your application and be able to put in for these, for anything that is added to the list of presumed diseases. Now I want to get to your questions. Let me just tell you what we're going to be doing going forward so you have a pretty good idea of, do you have to rush out and file an application? No. Do you have to file an application by July 1st? No, that would be a little ridiculous because it's right around the corner. And more importantly, we don't have any application forms, so it would be really hard. So don't worry, you don't have to run out and do anything right now. You can relax, because you're going to have plenty of time, and there's going to be plenty of communication, and we're going to make this process very transparent. We're going to hold a number of other town halls. We're going to look at all your comments to the regulations. We have a website that you can communicate with us at any time. We are now working on the claims process so we can get that up and running, the forms, all the things that are going to make this work efficiently and effectively. And we're going to publish frequently asked questions and answers. And by the time we get our modeling done on the economic loss, you're going to be able to look at a website and be able to determine how much money, more or less, you will be able to get under the fund. All you'll have to do is plug in the numbers, I hope. And that will help you in sort of figuring out what you should do and what you need. We're going to try to make this as simple as possible in filling out the forms. You're going to be able to fill them out on a website. We're going to try to get information that you've already given to Mount Sinai, to Bellevue. We're going to try to get their medical records directly, so you don't have to get them, so you don't have to give them to us. We're going to try to get information on disability payments and all these other payments directly from the city. You don't have to give it to us. We're going to try to make this process in plain English and a process that you can navigate as quickly and as easily as possible. So these are the dates you should be looking at. Our draft regulations have been published. You have till August 5th to tell us what you think about them. If you like something, tell us that you like it. It would be nice to get some. Don't just criticize us. If you like something, we'd like to know as well. And the final regs will be published in September, and we expect to be open and accepting claims in October. And let me just tell you about what the statute of limitations means in words that are not legalese. And that is that once the regulations these final regulations are approved, that's when everything starts running from. You have 2 years to file from that time for any injury you have prior to that time that you think is related to 9/11. And if a new injury is added, you're going to have 2 more years from that time. And if you get an injury and you didn't have it now, you'll have 2 years from the time you know or should know of the injury and that it's related to file a claim. But we do have a limit. You have to file your claim within 5 years. Okay, that's what the statute says. So you don't have to rush. You're not going to get more or less if you do it the first day or the second year. It's going to be the same compensation. I don't want you to feel anxious about it. However, we will be paying out some money as we're going along based on what we can do with the money we have and the number of claims. I want to say to you, this is our website. This is where we'll give you information. We will also provide information from other sources. I am going to reach out to as many of you as I can, and I'm going to do what I hope you at the end feel is fair and right. That is my only goal here, is to make this happen in a way that is fair to you, this community, the heroes of 9/11. Thank you.
Okay, first I want to thank the Special Master for that great presentation. I will say, though, I'm out of questions. I think she answered them all. Before I get into your questions, just a couple of notes about the process itself. Number one, I'm not going to be reading anybody's name, so if you've submitted a question via the website, I'm not going to read your name, so no worries about that. Number two is, I tried to pick and really group the various issues that people put together, okay, that people were asking repetitively, the various issues that came up. You'll see as I go through the questions, if your question was not specifically asked, okay, you don't feel that you put in a question and it wasn't answered, please feel free to stand up at the microphone afterwards. We did the best we could to really get this down to the 25 most commonly asked questions of the nearly 200 that we had, okay? And frankly, the Special Master really did just answer many of the questions that we are going to be posing to her in these 25 questions. However, I'm a big Rule of 3 guy. She presented it, we'll ask her again, and then I'm sure many of you will ask the same question when we get back to the microphone. And it'll be embedded in our brains and we'll have the right answer. Okay, so don't stop moving forward to ask that question when you stand up at the podium. Okay, so let's jump right into it. First question, who is eligible to submit a claim under the reopened VCF? Is the VCF for uniformed first responders only?
Let me answer the second question first. No, it's not only limited to first responders. It is available for all of those people who worked on the file who were part of the cleanup crews. My understanding is that there was a lawsuit in which 170 buildings were involved in the cleanup. And by the way, all of those buildings, my understanding also, and we're checking on this, were all below Chambers Street. So the cleanup workers are going to be able to come in under this fund. The people who worked at Fresh Kills, the people that worked on the barges, some people along the routes where the debris was taken. Also, the people who lived and worked in the neighborhood are also able to file claims under this fund. So it's a very broad group of people that are eligible to file applications.
Now, if you were a first responder, how long did you have to work or volunteer at the site in order to be eligible?
Right now, there is no provision in the statute that says you have to work for a certain period of time. There were rules in the first fund that required you to be working on the file for a certain period of time. We haven't put any of that yet into the regulations. We're studying the science and those issues, and when we can, we will put those in our frequently asked questions and answer that. It doesn't even have to work on the filing, but in the neighborhood. You should have been part of the cleanup crews that were cleaning up the debris and the dust. So we'll give you further information on that as we start building our minds.
And Sheila, just a follow-up question, kind of the same question. If you worked in the neighborhood but weren't a first responder, is there a specific time period for their exposure that they have to fulfill?
The only thing that the statute now requires is that you were there between the time. I'm sorry. Okay. Is this better?
Yes.
Why don't you stand up and it might be a little easier for you. Let me just put I got this one. Hey, can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yes.
I'm just looking for a date to answer that for you, and some of these dates I don't have in my head yet.
Is it May 31st? I
Yes.
believe? May 31st, 2002.
September 11th, 2001 to May 30th, 2002. So that time period has been extended. But to tell you the truth, we're going to find that if you weren't there in the first several days, or you weren't there, if you were there after the cleanups occurred, it's very unlikely that the dust could have caused your injury. And again, we want to hear from you on those issues.
You want to trade?
You didn't have any trouble when I was here, right? Let me just... I said the dates are the dates that are in the statute, which are much expanded over the dates that you would have to be there. But the dust and the debris was only there for a certain amount of time. And if you, say, started working or lived in the neighborhood after the time that the debris and the dust and the dirt were cleaned up, you're not going to be eligible because you couldn't have been exposed to the dirt and debris. Okay? You're very welcome.
What forms of proof will be allowed to prove that somebody was either a 9/11 volunteer or a worker?
That's a good question, and not only a volunteer or a worker, but also I think the question would include that you lived in the neighborhood. And we will post on our website and make it very clear from the application form what are the forms of proof for that purpose. And there will likely be two forms of proof. One of them could be an affidavit form. Others would be an employment record, a stub, a payment stub. If you're a fireman or a policeman or an EMT worker, it's fairly easy. If you were a construction worker, there are records of the people that work. We're going to get those records from the fire department, the police department, the construction workers. To make it easier for you, we will have some of that information. Some of that information you can supply to us. If you lived in the neighborhood, you're going to have to show some sort of rent receipt or a shareholder's certificate, some evidence that you lived there at that particular point in time. If you worked there, there will be other proofs that you would have to do. But we'll spell that all out for you. It will be very clear, and it won't be difficult to understand.
You went over this extensively in your presentation, but it's worth going over again, Sheila. Did I need to live or work at, or volunteer within a specific area in order to be eligible for compensation from the VCF? We know the answer to that question is yes, but can you just go over one last time?
Sure.
Where is that geographic area, and how were those boundaries reached?
The boundaries were reached by looking at the aerial photographs of where the dust and debris went. And basically, below Chambers Street, there's almost a dividing line you can see on these photos. And if people have other photos, I'd love to see them. We will reconsider where we drew that line, but we drew that line just north of Chambers.
If an applicant lived, worked...
And that was from almost, from Lower Manhattan, from almost River to River.
If an applicant lived, worked, or volunteered outside of those boundaries, but believes that they suffer from a 9/11 related illness, will the special master, you, allow them to file an application and listen to and entertain the evidence on why they feel they are ill from a 9/11 exposure?
The answer to that is if there are special circumstances that if you can show us that you have been exposed and it is outside of that line, we will look at that evidence, we will look at your application, and we have the discretion to do that. But let me just tell you, if we have lots of applications for people that are living on 14th Street and Houston Street, and I know all these streets, I live here. So if we have those kind of things, we're going to use up the fund. I mean, I really, you know, there were a lot of people who filed suit in the courts who weren't injured, and they received a little compensation, and they received a cancer policy. But if you come into this fund and you don't have a personal injury, you're not going to be able to recover anything. And you are going to be using up the time and the money of other people who have been injured. So keep that in mind. You are a community. And we don't want to be inundated with claims that are going to be ineligible because they didn't have a personal injury, and then we're using up the money of the fund.
When will we be able to submit claims under the Reopened Victims Compensation Fund officially?
I don't know exactly, but we're hoping that it will be sometime in October, as early as we can in October. We have no money before October, as I said, so it's going to be very hard for us to be up and running until October 1st when we have the money to do that. So I'm not sure whether it'll be October 15th, October 20th, but we are going to work day and night to make sure that we have things you need so that we're up and running in October, and you can file your application and we can start working on it.
Do we have a target date for when that application will be available to the public?
We don't. As soon as we can get it, we will make it available.
My heart beats still on this question a little bit, but it was the second most asked question of the 200. Do I need a lawyer to represent me on my Victims' Compensation Fund claim?
I even got a letter. I think the answer to that is you do not need a lawyer. If you want a lawyer, you should get a lawyer. It's an individual decision for each of you to make. We are going to try to put this together in a way that people can do it without lawyers. And there is going to be an ability to appeal if you're not satisfied. We hope people will be satisfied. We won't get a lot of appeals, but that is the process we're going to use. Lawyers are very handy people.
I second that.
They're also likely to be in the first iteration of this. There are a lot of pro bono lawyers that volunteered their time. There were other lawyers who charged. I mean, this is all going to be your individual decision, but we're going to try to make it user-friendly.
A question that was not addressed in your presentation. I previously participated in the lawsuit against the city, the contractors, and/or Port Authority. Is it true that the lawyers that represented me in that suit have to represent me for free under the Victims' Compensation Fund?
No one has to represent you for free. No one has to represent you. There's no requirement for that. There are requirements about attorney's fees in the statute and in the regulations, but nobody has to represent you for free.
If someone represented somebody on the suit against the city, the contractors, and/or the Port Authority, are they able to charge a fee for Victims' Compensation Fund representation?
We read the statute that if somebody represented you and collected more than 10%, and remember now, this statute provides that lawyers can only recover 10% of what you get paid. So that's the maximum that they can recover. And the way we read the statute, and I think we're right, but they're open to comments, and we'd like to hear comments from lawyers and community. The way we read the statute is that if you previously were the lawyer for a claimant and you got more than 10% of the recovery, you cannot recover any more money under this statute.
And final, assuming that same claimant that had a previous lawsuit, if that claimant switches attorneys, can the attorney I switch to charge me a fee to represent me? Or
The regs say, and we read the statute, that an attorney can. We don't want people not to have attorneys if they want them. We don't want to keep people from being represented, so that attorney can represent you. Another attorney, unfortunately, it's what the statute says in our opinion. If you have comments about it, send them to us. Let us hear from you. We'd like to hear the comments both of the legal community and the community at large.
The third most asked questions. I have received Social Security disability and New York State workers' compensation based on my 9/11 related illness. Will I be able to bring a claim onto the Victims' Compensation Fund?
You will be able to bring a claim. The fact that you have disability doesn't mean you can't bring a claim, but depending upon the payments you have, those payments may be deducted. And we're going to have to look at what those payments are, what they're for, whether they're related, and whether these are deductions which Congress has said we must take off. But you certainly can file a claim.
So two follow-ups just so we're clear to the crowd. If the workers' compensation benefit that you're receiving is not related to 9/11, it would not be deducted from your Victims' Compensation Fund award.
I do not believe it should be deducted.
And if your Social Security disability award is based on non-9/11 related illnesses, again, would not be deducted. Is
It
that
should
fair?
not be deducted.
Similar type question, Sheila. I worked for a New York State, New York City agency at the time of 9/11 and have subsequently received a 9/11 related disability pension from the municipal pension system. How will my pension affect my VCF award?
Again, we will take a hard look at those. The statute says that pension payments have to be deducted. Again, it would depend, I guess, on what the pension is for. Is it an early pension upon disability or what have you? And we'll be able, as we put this together, to be able to answer that question much more clearly and succinctly when we put together our whole compensation scheme.
Similar follow-up. if somebody is receiving, let's say, for police and fire in the room that are receiving a 75% disability pension, would the whole 75% be an offset against the Victims' Compensation Fund award, or merely the 25% additional that they would receive as a disability payment?
Again, I don't think I can answer that right now tonight. These are the kinds of questions that we are looking at in putting together the entire economic piece of this, and we'll make it very clear again in the commonly asked questions and in our models as to whether these things and which deductions will be made and how they will be taken into consideration.
I submitted a claim under the first Victims' Compensation Fund, but my condition has gotten worse. Am I able to bring a claim under this reopened Victims' Compensation Fund?
The answer to that is yes, assuming that you did not in the first compensation fund get paid for a permanent disability. You can make a claim. We'll look back at the award in the first fund, and if that award is not for a permanent disability, you will be able to get compensated in addition to what you got before.
And is it fair to say the benefits that they received under the first Victims' Compensation Fund would also act as an offset against this new award?
Yes.
I participated in the recently settled lawsuit against the City Contractors and Port Authority. Am I allowed to submit a claim for benefits under the reopened Victims' Compensation Fund?
Hopefully, read that one again.
I participated in the recently settled lawsuit against the City Contractors and Port Authority. Am I allowed to submit a claim for benefits under the reopened Victims' Compensation Fund?
You are permitted to put in a claim under the new fund, but the awards you received in the settlement will be deducted from what you would be awarded in this fund. So it will be important to understand that you can't collect twice for the same injury, so that will come off as a settlement.
Again, a very frequently asked question. I signed my settlement agreement against the Port Authority after the President signed the Zadroga bill into law on January 2nd. But my lawyers tendered a settlement release in my name prior to the bill's passage. Will I be excluded from the Victims' Compensation Fund?
Just to put this in certain context for those of you who might not understand the consequences of this, the statute provides that if you tendered a release before, in a settlement, before the President signed the bill, then you can come into the fund. But if you tendered a release after that, you cannot come into the fund. And in some instances, the lawyers signed on behalf of their clients and tendered the release. The clients did not tender the release before that date. And it's for a bunch of people, it's a very important issue. And we've been talking to the lawyers involved in these issues, and they have provided us a great deal of documentation that we're studying, and we are going to come out with a resolution of this in the next week or so, and I think we'll be able to that question will then be answered very clearly. So we're studying all of the documentation that has been given to us. The lawyers have been very cooperative and helpful, and we will have a decision on that in a short order.
Much of the 9/11 community believes that the exposures they endured at the World Trade Center site have caused significant increases in various forms of cancer. Will the Victims' Compensation Fund compensate individuals that suffer from cancer now?
I think this is one of the hardest questions for this fund, and the hardest questions for myself and all the people that will be working with this fund. And there are many, many cancers that people are listing as cancers that are related to exposure to 9/11. We are going to work with the people at Mount Sinai, with the people at Bellevue, the doctors, the scientists, the people at the fire department who have been studying this. We're going to work with the experts. We are going to study all of this, and we are going to make a determination of which cancers are related. We're going to work with Dr. Howard and the special advisory committees that are going to be looking into this. As I said, when we add illnesses, when we add conditions, you'll be able to file a supplement. You'll be able to file with the funds. If you didn't file before, or if you filed before, you'll be able to supplement your application. This is high priority for us. We know how important it is to this community, and we are going to give it the attention it deserves and come up with the right answer, we hope, based on the best medical and science that's available for us at this point. We know it's hard to make these connections because it often takes a long time to do that. And because of that, we're not applying a legal standard. We're not applying a standard that the courts would apply. We're applying a scientific, reasonable scientific medical standard. And we're going to work very hard to come up with an answer in as short a time as we can, working with Dr. Howard and the panels.
Just to follow up on that, then, Sheila, will you as a special master currently listen to that scientific evidence if presented to you in a claim after October 1st, or are we waiting for NIOSH to add it as a presumed disability?
No, we're not waiting for NIOSH necessarily to add it. If NIOSH adds it, we'll add it right away. But I'm not going to look at it in individual cases. It'll be categories of cases, and we're going to ask for help from the plaintiff lawyers who are already starting to give us scientific information and meet with us. We're going to do it with meetings of scientists and medical personnel. We're going to do it as a category, and then once the category is listed, then people will be able to supplement or add. We're not going to do it on individual cases.
Probably the most frequently asked question. I was a 9/11 worker, volunteer, or area resident, and currently do not suffer from any physical impairment, but I do suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. Will I be allowed to bring a claim onto the Victims' Compensation Fund?
I think this is the second hardest question after the cancer question, and we have viewed this from all the ways we can. And I can tell you the statute is very clear. It says physical harm, which was interpreted in the first iteration of this by Special Master Feinberg to be physical injury. There were no payments for mental injuries under the old ZCF. But more importantly, this was debated in Congress, and Congress made the cut. Congress decided that they would allow for medical treatment, but they would not allow for compensation. It's very clear in the history of the bill and in the statute, and it's very unfortunate. But our hands are tied. If we give out money that is not covered by this statute, then we will be at a disadvantage, and Congress will think we squandered this fund. And it's very important that the fund be used as it was meant to be for the people who were really injured as a result physically from this incident, from this disaster. So I believe our hands are tied. I'm glad that Congress gave money for medical treatment, 5 years at least. Hopefully that will be renewed and will go on indefinitely. But that's the status and state of the statutory language and the statutory history.
One follow-up.
Be as transparent and open, and I want to communicate. And I've met with many, many lawyers, and I will continue to meet with them to get their input, and I'm open to the argument.
I'm a 9/11 first responder widow. Will I be able to bring a claim on my deceased spouse's behalf?
Yes.
Will my children be able to bring a claim onto the Victims' Compensation Fund for their loss of a parent?
Yes, but it's one claim. You can only make one claim. The children will get, the personal representative of the decedent will be the person that makes the claim, and the regulations have a lot of information on who can make that claim for death. And the children's claim is included in that, and they will get non-economic loss. There was in the previous iteration of this non-economic loss both for the spouse and for the children. The same thing will apply.
do they have a right to bring the claim merely as being the spouse, or do they have to have a special representation from a surrogate's court or anything of that nature?
I think they're going to have a personal representative, but I think we'll spell that out of who can make it, and they may have to then become a personal representative.
I lived, worked, or volunteered within the World Trade Center site, but I'm not sick at this time. Do I need to bring any type of claim now?
Nope, you don't, and I'm encouraging you not to, because we can't give you anything under this act. You have to have a personal injury. Not now. I mean, consider yourself very fortunate. If you get a personal injury that's one of these injuries within 5 years, you'll be able to apply to the fund. The fund is open for 5 years. But if you don't have one now, you have nothing that we can give you under this fund.
And they don't have to file any type of notice of participation form like the other
They
administrative
do
agencies?
not. There's no notice of participation is necessary. If we change our mind on that, we certainly let everybody know. But right now, we have no necessity to file anything if you haven't been injured.
How long do I have to file a claim before I am time barred?
You would have to file a claim within 2 years of the time you reasonably know you have an injury that is related to 9/11. If you have an injury now, then it's 2 years from the time that the regulations became final. And the max is 5 years. We go out of business. We don't go out of business. We go out of business for applications. After 5 years, the fund will be in existence for 7 years, because the 6th year we get in over little less than more than $1 billion that will be distributed. So that's the way the money was set up by Congress for the fund, I assume because of budgetary issues. It's 5 years from the time the regulations are final.
Will the Victims' Compensation Fund award benefits for pain and suffering, or merely compensatory damages for my lost wages?
No, there's going to be economic loss and non-economic loss. And there's a non-economic loss component. Us lawyers would call it pain and suffering. There are lots of other things that might go into that award. There will be presumed awards for that kind of pain and suffering based on total disability, partial disability, no disability, but still an injury. So those, I think, will get clarified as we set up the program.
I was excluded from workers' compensation due to untimely filing of my claim after last year's deadline. Will the Victims' Compensation Fund award benefits for reimbursement for my medical expenses that I have incurred as a result of my 9/11 related illnesses?
If you are eligible and you get an award, the fund will pay for unreimbursed medical expenses. That means medical expenses that were not covered under a health plan, under a union plan, under a government plan, a Mount Sinai plan. So if you have unreimbursed medical or drug expenses, you will be able to recover from that.
Which also means keep your receipts, everybody.
Keep your receipts.
Once I file a claim, how long will it take for me to receive my benefits?
Well, that's hard to say, because we look at this from the time, not that you necessarily filed your claim, but from the time your claim is substantially complete. In other words, you may file a claim, someone may ask you from the Special Master's Office for additional information, things may have been left out of the claim. So once the claim is substantially complete, then we will make a decision within 120 days. Once we make that decision, you can either accept the award and you will get paid something within 20 days of your acceptance. You can appeal from that award, and after a hearing, you will then get paid 20 days after the final award is decided by the hearing. So those are the dates, but it will depend on, all kinds of issues that I can't tell you now. When is it substantially complete, etc. But those are the outside dates that we're going to live by.
You had discussed the fact that only 875 only, but only $875 million has been put forth within the first 5 years of the total over $2.7 billion. Can claimants expect a certain percentage at this point of their award initially within that first 5 years? Do we have a percentage?
We do not, because the statute tells us that we have to look at the total amount of the awards that will be given and the amount of claimants that file. So at this point, it's impossible to determine how much will be the amount of the first award you get. It will depend upon how many claims we have, how much the awards are, and how much money we have to distribute within the first 5 years. And we'll model that. We'll get experts who can look at this from a statistical analysis point of view and tell us how much money we can give out without breaking the bank in the first 5 years. But you should know is the award that you're going to get is going to be the award that the modeling and the economics, and each of these are going to be decided individually because each of you have a different economic situation. So you have different wages, you have different businesses, you have different amounts, different times you are out, different disabilities. So all that will be looked at, and you'll get the award. So your economic loss and your non-economic loss. What we will be able to pay you under that award will depend on how many other awards there are and how much money there is that we can pay you. So that's why we talk about that there may be a prorating down based on the fact that there are too many people with too many awards that are far more than this fund was meant to cover. And that's why we say we have to stay within the eligibility requirements. We have to stay within the statute because we want to do what Congress wanted to do, and you want us to do that also. You really do. You don't want us to go outside the terms of the statute.
The final question for this portion of the forum, and in follow-up to that, will there be a mechanism to allow a claimant to show severe economic need to either get the entire award or a greater percentage of the award up front within that first 5 years?
We would really like to do that if we could, but I don't think it's going to be possible. I mean, maybe when we see how many people are applying and what the amounts are, we may be able to do that within our discretion. But right now, we don't see how we're going to be able to know who has what kind of economic difficulties in a way that we are not using up a lot of the administrative costs of the fund. So at this point, there is no provision for that. If we could do that, we would, but I don't see that occurring. And it's going to depend to a large extent on how many claims there are and what the nature of those claims are.
I want to thank you for answering all these questions. Let's give the special master a round of applause. What we'll do, ladies and gentlemen, is just take a 2-minute break so that you can start lining up. If you have questions for the special masters, we've set up microphones on the left of the stage and the right of the stage. We'd ask that you line up. Okay, I'm going to start on my left here. Mr. LeBeau, feel free to ask your question. Can I have silence so we can have everybody hear the questions that are being asked?
Is the mic? Yeah, that's all. My question is this. It's great you guys are doing all of these studies and everything, you know, for our illnesses, our injuries. But what I'd like to know is, when are you going to stop studying us and start treating us? Because a lot of us is, you know, we're sick, we're suffering, we're dying, and we're being told when we get to a certain point, hey, we don't know if any of your injuries are 9/11 related, and then they just cut you loose. I'll give you one example. One example is Caesar Borgia.
that man had stage 4 cancer, and he was told that all he had was a chest cold. He went home, he had to come back to the hospital. He died in the hospital. No help. What are we, what is this going to be revamped? That, instead of being us being numbers, are we going to become people that are going to be treated?
Well, I hope so. I can't speak for Title I, which you're talking about treatment. I have no ability to influence what injuries will be covered in Title I for treatment. We are going to do this, and we're not going to wait a long time. And we have to study it because it's not covered. We have to make sure that it's related. Otherwise, we would not be within the statute. We're going to talk to the people at Mount Sinai. They have opinions. We'll talk to the people at the fire department. Talk to people at Fealgood. This isn't going to be hopefully a very long process. I know everything is long. It's been much too long.
That's understandable. A lot of my illnesses that are on that list, I'm not being treated for anymore. I was cut off.
That is something you have to take up with NIOSH and with those people, and you should do that. Okay, with Dr. House. Thank you.
Let me make 2 notes. Number 1, for everybody on the line, try to keep your questions regarding the Victims' Compensation Fund, okay? Instead of the health care treatment, Sheila nor anybody really here can answer those questions on behalf of NIOSH. So try to keep them about the Victims' Compensation Fund. On a sidebar, I would say to Ross Montoya, I have your driver's license if you need it. Mr. Christian.
And for the record, Caesar Borgia died of pulmonary fibrosis. So if you're going to come up here, get your facts right.
Mr. Christian.
Yes, my name is Philip Kirshner. I just want to thank everyone for getting involved in the fight. My question is, there are many, many people who are at Ground Zero who are members of rescue squads from Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, from many, many different places. They came when they were asked. They came and they volunteered. These people had regular jobs. Many didn't work after that. My question to you, what kind of outreach will you be doing to the volunteer ambulance and in the community?
It's a very good question. We're going to do very substantial outreach.
And I'm willing to do that work.
Well, we will go. We'll come and ask for your help. We're going to do it Townhall. We're going to do similar town halls in Staten Island, in Long Island, in New Jersey, and other places where these people are. We're going to reach out to those communities. I intend to do webinars where people can ask questions on the web. They don't have to come into the city to do this. They'll go to them. We're going to do everything in our power to reach those people. We don't want to abandon them.
No, I know. And what I'm trying to say is, what I'd like to see is some people from your staff come out to the different bases to do,
When I have a staff, you will.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Christian. And I just want to know, if you feel comfortable, please state your name so we can talk to you. Mr. Palmer, please state your name.
Rich Palmer. My question has to deal with collateral and pensions. Being a uniform employee for the city for 20 years, we paid into our pension. And being in the correction department, some of us in the correction department that got promoted, we had to pay a higher percent than other uniform respondents that are currently in the field, where they pay a 3% into their pension. The correction guys had to pay 9%. Now they're holding that against as collateral. Where does the difference come in that we paid into this pension for 20 years?
I think when we look at the pension, what you paid into them gets taken into consideration. And what would be deducted would be less because you paid more. And we'll make that clear when we get to those issues of how we're going to look at those pensions. But that will be taken into consideration. What you paid for will make a difference.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rich. Sir.
Christopher Capitanos. I'm going to go back to the geographic boundaries. I work at 250 Church Street. I understand, I heard you earlier, that you said that you took into consideration the area of scientific evidence and all. Somehow, it seems to me, we were told everybody who worked to reside south of Canal Street since 2001 can be treated and all. It was not official, it was not written. But it appeared to me earlier, when you spoke, that it's written in stone. It's south of Reed Street. Is it or it isn't?
Well, first of all, you're confusing the treatment part from the compensation part. The treatment part is south of Canal Street and south. If you have an injury, you can be treated at one of the centers in Mount Sinai, Bellevue, etc. For purposes of compensation, we did not see evidence that there was debris or dust further than Reed Street. Now, if there's evidence of that, we'd like to see. If there are special cases, we will consider those special cases. But at this point, that's where the evidence is. For this particular fund on the compensation, treatment is different. You're covered for treatment.
Okay, well, this is my opinion. I know it's not going to change anything. Somehow, it might sound ironic. It seems to me, starting from Hudson River all the way to the East River, somehow this boundary, geographic boundary, omitted the buildings that are municipal buildings, the court system, schools, starting from Hudson River, which is not too far away from Reed Street. It's only a few blocks. We're talking about the White Street, Franklin Street, Board of Community College, all the way down, a huge building, 60 Hudson. You know the area. That's all municipal employees there. Further down, we have New York Law School. We have the HRA buildings around there, Wall Street, Health Department, the entire court system.
We certainly understand. We understand what you're saying in terms of the limited, that Reed is excluding other areas. What I would say, and it brings us to an important thing for you, for the special master, I don't think we've addressed, and I appreciate you doing this, is how does one comment on these proposed regulations at this point, so that a gentleman like this can comment officially?
That's a better question.
You can, the website name is up here, we'll give it out again, over and over again. You can just go to the Justice Department website, 9/11 website. You can do it directly there. You can send us a letter. You can call. We're setting up a telephone line that you can call in your comments. So there'll be lots of ways for you to comment, and we want to hear your comments. If we got it wrong, we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bruce Edwards. Thank you, Ms. Birnbaum, for taking our questions. Appreciate it. I'm part of the responders group, the subset that has cancer, and our lack of treatment of cancer in the Mount Sinai program is what concerns me. Even though I am a cancer patient, I don't believe Mount Sinai really has my records regarding that. They're only interested in area diseases and all those things. There's no group record. The fire department is separate, police department is separate, people like me are separate who has no affiliation with the group or the superstructure. I don't know how you're going to get this stuff together in the age of technology.
What you're saying is there's no record of you having cancer and that being related to it, but they're not being treated at Mount Sinai or any of the centers.
My doctors believe that my cancer is not related. That's their belief. Mount Sinai says that's really nice, but here's a pill for your sinus problems. So, I can't get my daughter's medical records. I don't know how you're going to get records for 1,000 people that are unrelated to any, fire department group or police department.
That is a very good point you're making. I think what we'll be doing in the first instance is looking at those statistics, however, because we have a bunch of statistics we can look at and extrapolate from. And maybe we actually do a little more. Did you sign up for the World Trade Center monitoring program?
Yes, I've been part of the monitoring system.
Okay,
Since
so you're in their
2002.
monitoring system.
Yes, but they don't care about my cancer.
Well, I care about
I
you.
know you do.
I care about your cancer, and I care that you're in the system. We're going to go back to that system and look at all those statistics, because that's the best evidence.
Well, that's the problem. The statistics don't exist.
Well, they do exist. It's just getting to them. They have a record of you.
I hope you can find it. I just wanted one final piece. The New York City Medical Examiner has agreed that lymphoma is a non-related disease, and in 2008, a police officer was who died last night was listed as.
We're going to take a very hard look at the forms. I promise.
Ma'am?
Hello, my name is Nicole Simpson.
I'm going to interrupt you for just for 1 second. I apologize. If I could just ask that the people in the back, if we could just cut the conversation, if you just want to move them to the side, we can't really hear everything that's going on. I know it's affecting some of the cameramen. Sorry about that.
My name is Nicole Simpson, and I am a survivor. I'm not a first responder, but I was in the building and worked in that geographical location. I live in New Jersey, and in 10 years, no information has filtered down to New Jersey. I'm a part of those group of individuals that would like to know how I can be integrally involved in getting other New Jersey residents access to this information that took me almost 8 years to find. I really need to make sure that somebody's name is on the list that can have access, because we've been sick and there's a lot of symptoms up there that I've had for years and didn't know that I could even be treated for it, let alone any victim's compensation. So I really need to know what we can do.
Well, I think that's a very good question. One thing you can do is go onto the website and sign up. And when you sign up on the website, we will give any changes we make, any information we put out, we'll send to you through the website. So you can do it two ways. You can go onto the website anytime you want. There'll be a lot of information on the website. It's not there yet. We're building it. There will be a lot of information there. But you can also sign up, and we'll give you any new information as it's coming out. We'll send it to you by email. You give us your email address. So that's one way you can do it. Two, I'd like to do a town hall in New Jersey. And if you give me your information, I'll get in touch with you and we'll see how you can help us to reach out to those people in Jersey who maybe
Jersey City is perfect. I can make a phone call tomorrow.
Jersey City would be fine. So
yes,
just
ma'am.
make sure you get me your information and we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just add that there will also be more money for outreach in the current Title I program, so there will be more efforts to reach out to Jersey and areas like that. So I think that'll help.
Thanks.
Miss?
Lynch, Kathy Lynch. Just a very brief question, follow-up question with respect to the geographic boundary. You indicated how you can be contacted concerning comments. When will you start accepting comments concerning?
Right now. Do it today, tomorrow, the next day. The comment period is in full bloom, and we'd love to hear your comments.
Thank you.
I know there are a lot of people who feel that we should extend this boundary, and we'd like to hear those forms. We'd like to hear.
I'm certainly one of those people who believe the boundary needs to be extended. Not extensively extended, but extended.
Just let us know. We will read them all.
Thank you.
Sir.
Hi, my name is Jamie Hazen, and I'm a former New York State EMT. I was a volunteer on 9/11. I went down on day 2, and I think this question, a lot of people have this question that really just can't find answers to. My doctor is Michael Crane. I never imagined I'd be here in a million years, but I developed severe breathing problems, not even knowing why, going to all sorts of doctors, for them to only just send me to sign up. I've been in touch with the Fealgood Foundation. You guys are amazing. And I just want to know how I'm going to prove that I was down there. I mean, we couldn't see 15 feet in front of us, let alone get an ID badge. So to be asked that question is just, it's insulting. I threw my boots away because they smelled like the rubber, and it reminded me of it, and it triggered the emotions that come back from it. And I'm sick now. I have to have surgery next month. I just want to get help.
Are you getting treated in the Mount Sinai program now?
Yeah, Dr. Crane's been my doctor for many years. He said this is from 9/11. And I didn't know why the heck I couldn't breathe, frankly, because I just read it off as all right. I did it, it's over. If you had any training at all, or former training, and you were in New York City when it happened, you went down there. I mean, that's what you did. That's what a volunteer does. You don't even think about it. So now it's like, what do I do? How am I going to prove this to you?
Well, you're going to first of all give me an affidavit and sworn to affidavit that says you were down there. And you can give me any other information you think that would establish that you were there. Describe things. There is going to be more than one way. You're right. The volunteers have the hardest problem. Some of them kept badges, some of them got badges, some of them didn't. And but we're not going to throw you out of the program if you have some, if you swear that you were there and you have something that you can give us that will be helpful. And we're going to put on the website and put on the application what we will look at, what we will need in order to help you get through your application.
So if I can't find someone, you're saying you'll still take a look at it. It's okay.
Do you have anybody else on the file that you work with that would recognize you?
Unfortunately, no. I went down day 2 by myself. I felt sick as a dog after that, and that's it. I'm embarrassed to even be here because everyone was there for so long. I'm embarrassed to be sick, but I really have nothing.
We'll look at your application.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you for hearing us. I'm wondering about the total budget for administration from you down to the claims processors, and is anybody planning on working pro bono in administration?
I'm working pro bono. I'm not getting paid a dime. We're hoping that we'll get pro bono help. I'm hoping we're going to get pro bono lawyers that will help as well.
Is there a staff now?
Right now, we have Justice Department people that have been extraordinarily helpful. The Justice Department is going to provide a lot of help. The U.S. Attorney may end up providing a lot of help. We're going to try to do this on shoestring. But there are some things we need to go outside for that's going to cost money. We have to set up a data system. We have to have data operators. We have to set up the models. I mean, so it's...
is there a projection of what?
Not yet, but we're working on a projection for the budget, and we're going to do the best we can. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
So go right ahead.
I'm Dr. Goody, and I was the podiatry volunteer down at St. Paul's Chapel for 8 months post 9/11. I'm part of the Mount Sinai treatment program now myself. The original Zadroga bill asked for something like $7 billion. It was cut down with compromises down to the 2.7 that it is now. With all the people here that are having problems, myself included, obviously I don't think that this is eventually going to cover everything and everybody. Are you, and I know John Feal is, but are you going to be helping to try to extend the program to get back some of the compromised money that was taken off the original $7 billion?
That's a very good question. I think there is going to be a lot of folks from the unions, John, others, who are going to try to go back to Congress at some point when we know how big the pot should be, because we'll have a better idea of the awards. My intent is to publish every year the number of people that have applied, the number of people that have been eligible, the amount of money of the awards, so anybody can see what that number is and how that number grows. And if they want to use those numbers to try to get more money, I'm willing to pay.
So you can advocate and help out with this?
I am sure that Congress is going to ask me how I spent the money and why I got to those numbers, and are they legit? And I'm going to be prepared to answer them.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Who's ready to go back to D.C.?
Yeah.
How you doing? My name is Chris. I just have a real quick question. The more I'm thinking about it, it's more a suggestion. But I know you're trying to make you're talking about the website, making it user-friendly and punching in digits and everything else. And some people might be able to get an idea of roughly what issues they have, what kind of compensation they would get. But you were talking also about the fund and the administrative costs and people making frivolous cases and everything else. Do you think that might be the smartest thing to do? Actually list that on there, what people can make? Because once files are claimed and people start receiving checks for their funds, they might say, hey, you know what? I know a doctor or this, that, and yeah, they might not give it to you, but just file it anyway. To keep the fraudulent claims out, many people in here have legit cases going back many, many years, and it's documented. I don't think that's the smartest thing to do, because you're just going to bog yourselves down, and you're just going to waste the minimal money there for everybody in this room and everybody else, not just in New York, but in the Pentagon and everything else. Like I said, it's more of just a suggestion, but I think maybe guys should think about doing that, because once you start, you know, people seeing what kind of money they might be able to get, you might be getting, that gets out, you might be getting more and more frivolous lawsuits, and it's just going to back everything up for everybody else in here that really needs something.
I think it's a very important observation, and let me answer it this way. There is, I think, real need for transparency. I don't want to hide the ball for anybody. I think it's very important that people understand what they can get and what is going to happen. I think it's very disappointing. It was very disappointing to me when I really read it. It's not a $2 billion plus fund in the first 5 years. It's only an $875 million fund. That means we had to do different things. It's going to affect you can't get, if there are a lot of claims, you're absolutely right, you're not going to get your full award in the first 5 years. You may not get your full award in the 60s. We have a very hard problem. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and the hardest thing I will ever do in my life. To try to do this in a way so that the frauds get thrown away with a minimum of effort, and the people that are deserving get what they deserve. And you're absolutely right. How we set this fund up, what we require, are there going to be less burdens for people who have been treated at Mount Sinai and other places? Not tomorrow, but we're treated all the way back. They have less of a burden, it seems to me. And how we write those in to how we give out these awards, I think it's going to be very important. We're going to take these kinds of comments very seriously and try to draw the right lines. But I appreciate it, and you're absolutely right.
I would just like to say thank you very much. What I got out of this tonight, even though you're talking to a room full of people, it almost seemed like we were talking individually in a hallway. So I really respect, I really think you put your heart and soul in this. And not only myself, I'm part of the uniform force in New York City. Many people here are, many people aren't. But, you know, we just appreciate that there are people still on our side. And thank you very much, and I wish you the best of luck over the next 7 years, because you're going to need it.
And I'm going to be back and back. I want to hear from you. I don't want
Thank you.
you, all of you. I want you to get a breakthrough.
We're just going to ask that everybody online, just one question, and then move along, only due to time restraints. Always well dressed.
Sheila, so you know that's my new board member.
I'm Special Master. My name is Alex Sanchez. I'm a 9/11 responder. After the September 11 attack, I went past those barricades. I knew what was expected of me then. 2003, men and women started getting sick and dying, and I knew what was expected of me then also. These past 8 years, I've been walking the halls of Congress alongside my co-worker Manoj Chek with many of the men and women who are here today. We are very grateful that you are here today, and we finally feel the ball is in our court. But my greatest concern today as a member of the private sector is insurance companies haven't made an offer in these past 8 years. Unlike the city, we have not been able to come to a deal with the insurance company. Is there any provision under the Zadroga Act that would imply the federal government to make insurance companies pay for those people like myself? I also today am the director of United We Stand. Thanks to the leadership of John Field, I have helped out with the Fealgood Foundation, but today I assist nearly 6,000 Latino workers who did the cleanup. And once again, thank you, and thank our President and our Attorney General, Eric Holder, for naming such the correct person for this job.
Well, thank you very much. When you're talking about insurance companies, who are you talking about exactly?
Well, I am a cleanup worker. I went inside buildings surrounding the pit. 3 of these buildings are considered on site. 1, 2, 3, World Financial Center. For these past 8 years, we have a personal injury lawsuit. We have met with my lawyers, the Canada firm, just yesterday. And we're trying to figure how come something is good for one side and then the other side seems to be left behind. We're not second-class citizens, all of us together. If there's a lesson to be learned, is that In conjunction, we brought the city of New York and economy and our country back up on its feet.
Well, I wish I could help you with regard to what's going on in your court lawsuit. Unfortunately, we can't, but I can tell you this. If you file a claim in our fund, you will be treated fairly in this fund, and if you are injured, you will get economic loss, and if you worked in those buildings and you have, then you're going to get treated here like everybody else, no matter how you got treated in the court system.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Kenny. How you doing? My name is Mike Kenny, and I'm a Vice President, Local 375, Civil Service Technical Guild, fall under DC 37. I want to thank you. And I'd also like to read a little quote here from George Washington before I start. The true administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good government. And today I'm seeing good government, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
The question I have for you, this is my pet peeve, is the treatment program. Why can't the treatment program treat us as a patient for all our illnesses, not this select list of World Trade Center? We're civilians, we get 12 sick days a year. By the time we use up our appointments going to the treatment center, we'll be told, well, this really doesn't fall under the Trade Center. You know, it's not proven yet. Go see another doctor. We don't have our own. It's killing our marriage.
Doctor, do you want to address that?
Yeah, let's follow up and talk about that. They are limited to providing free treatment for World Trade Center related conditions. That's what's in the bill now going forward. So that's limited. And I think your question is there some way that they can expedite your care for other conditions, and I think that's a legitimate request.
Okay,
if it can be done.
My members have insurance, and they're more than willing to. Well, so if we go to the doctor and they see something that's wrong with us, why don't they take care of us all together? If they have to bill for it, bill for it. But don't be wasting our time where we get one appointment, we get another appointment. Before you know it, we're out of sick days, and then God forbid we're sick.
Yes. I'll bring it up with Dr. Howard, and I'll follow up with you personally also.
Thanks, Mike.
Good, thank you.
Sir.
My name is Krishna. I work for the New York City Department of Design and Construction. My name is Krishna. I work for the New York City Department of Design and Construction, and I'm an engineer. And in 1999, they started a Wall Street project. So we were supposed to put water main around Wall Street project. Then apparently after 9/11 had happened, so they put me in the night shift to do the water main because everything was ruptured. And I was in the World Trade Center debris also. And about 4 years ago, I got cancer. I went to throat cancer. Luckily, it was benign. Luckily, it was benign. But I was admitted in Sloan Kettering Hospital. Luckily, it turned out to be benign. So, all the hospital charges, my insurance took care of it, but I was out of work for almost a month. So, will I be compensated? That's all.
At this moment, cancers are not included. If we include them, you would be compensated for the injuries you had as long as you're eligible. We have to look at the whole format. So the answer is you may be in the future when we add cancers, or which cancers we add, but right now you would not be compensable. So it's unfortunate, but I'm glad you're healthy, and I'm glad it was benign.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Jake Raywall. I work in Long Island. I'm an oncologist. I've had a number of patients who've been diagnosed with rare brain tumors. I specialize in treating brain tumors. My question is, why isn't the cancer information being collected better? Because if you don't have good cancer data, you're not going to get good. Statisticians aren't going to be able to process that. I mean, we don't have anywhere to really report. We don't have any, for infectious diseases, doctors, those are typically serious infectious diseases may be reportable, but that's not the case for a cancer that you might think is 9/11 related. So that's one question, and why is the cancer information more publicly available? you know, in other countries, like in Sweden, there's generally a central cancer registry, so it's very easy to collect that data, but with this situation, it doesn't seem to be so.
I think that's an excellent question, and I think, Jim.
Yes. There are studies underway currently with the fire department and with the registry and with Mount Sinai to match people against the state cancer registries.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like that data is going to be very good because there's a lot of patients, for example, those under my care, you know, where they may not be in the file, they may not be a police officer. Or,
yeah, well, if they're in the program, and there's some sort of study issues, but they are reaching out to them. We should talk afterwards. I don't want to take up a lot of time here.
Yes, hi. Good evening. My name is Rosa Bramble-Lee. And first of all, I would like to thank you for putting this conference together. And I think it's very important, the fact that it is actually being translated into Spanish. For the last 6-7 years, I've been working with the Latino immigrants, both documented and undocumented, those cleanup workers who worked at Ground Zero. My area is of mental health as a clinical social worker. Over the years, the Fealgood Foundation has been wonderful, providing support for a lot of our community. I have a question in regard to mental health. What is the role in regard to the community-based organizations and private practitioners, I am both, looking at the mental health needs for the community? I work in Queens, and under the Child Care Act, the mental health funds were available through the city. All of that has really stopped. However, mental health continues to be a significant need in the community. There's a lot of trauma considering 10 years after 9/11. For the first time, there are a lot of support and social groups, especially for the Latina women cleanup workers that we are forming. Many of our clients do not have even a Metro card to go to the medical facilities in order to receive these really critical services. So what are the roles for the mental health practitioners, both in community? The funds that are available, will it be just for the hospitals, or is there a role for the community-based organizations?
I think, Jim, that's up your alley.
And as you're talking, and also in terms of outreach, we believe that the Spanish is very important. And I heard Townhalls, who we in Jackson Heights would love to have you. Also the website, you know, in terms of actually being Spanish.
Let me just answer quickly. There's more money for outreach, and there'll be more outreach in Spanish and for people speaking other languages available through that, including grants and so forth. That's just getting started. And there will be the ability now for, I think, expansion of healthcare services throughout the community in a better fashion. It's been a problem. The city ran out of money, had to stop the community care program they had for mental health. I think they'll be able to expand services in a way, you know, that all starts, you know, Friday, July 1st.
Under mental health.
Under mental health and in other areas also. So.
And let me just say, I would love to come to Queens. I do know where it is. And just leave me some information so that I can get in touch with you, and we can set something up for a town hall in Queens. It will be bilingual. You have brought to my attention something that I should have had in the front of my mind, but was in the back of my mind. We'll make sure that our announcements are in both English and Spanish so that we can help that whole community. You're absolutely, I thank you for that suggestion.
And thank you for being so open to the suggestions. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Yeah, hi, my name is Lauren Truman. I just had one question. I wanted to know, when will the cancer numbers and statistics, like what kind of cancers there are, how many 9/11 responders have those kinds of cancers? Because my husband was diagnosed in February, and I searched for 3 months. I could find it from the police department, I could find it from the fire department.
My understanding is that there are some new articles that are going to be out in September that are going to look into these issues more broadly, including looking at the firemen and policemen. And I'm waiting to see those articles. I haven't seen them
Right,
yet.
will they be making them public though, so that
Yeah.
they'll be easily accessible?
Yeah,
They'll
they'll
be
be.
published scientifically, and I think there'll be a series of them out next.
Yeah, there is a lot of efforts going on in the scientific community on these issues, and these papers are going to be very valuable for us to review, and we'll see if we can get them on websites so that you can be able to access.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name is Rafael Hernandez. I was first responder in September 11th, and my question is: some people who was cleaning workers or many Latino people has problem because some families who was working there in Ground Zero or around Ground Zero now are in other countries, and they don't have the way for to come here for to make a claim. It's possible to make a claim in some situation or way.
Yes, you don't have to be here physically to make a claim. You can make a claim by going on the website and filling out an application, or somebody can get them a paper application and they can fill it out. You don't have to be here to do it.
Okay, thank you very much, and please don't forget the Latino people. Thank you. Thank you. Ma'am.
Special Master of Birnbaum, thank you for being here. My name is Kimberly Flynn, and I've been working with the downtown community to deal with 9/11.
Guys, quiet down, please.
I'm Kimberly Flynn, and I've been working with the downtown community ever since 9/11 to deal with the environmental health risks. And I do need to say that there is something of a disconnect between Title I and Title II of the bill. In fact, Title I provides treatment, everybody, Title I provides treatment to people who became sick as they lived, worked, or attended school below Houston Street, not Canal Street. And the center is treating people who have 9/11 related illness between Canal Street and Houston Street, as well as below Canal Street. So I guess what I would do right now is to just plead with you to compensate for what is clearly a disconnect between Title I, the medical program part of the bill, and Title II, the Victims' Comp Fund part of the bill. We believe that there are many people who have claims that need to get proper consideration who live above Reed Street.
Two things on that. We're open to your discussion. I'd like to speak to you and the other community members. I think I've spoken to a lot of people who were policemen, firemen, construction workers. I need to get a better understanding of the people who live and work in the community. And if you give me your name, address, and I can contact you, we'll do that. We'll set up a meeting. I want to hear more about this, more about you and your community, and how we can understand what's been going on there. So I really want to reach out to this community.
Thanks for being so receptive.
Just
We'll
make
be in
sure,
touch.
make sure you give me the information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I will definitely call you.
How are you? Last couple of questions. Go ahead.
As I hear the doctor and I hear a few other people, as I hear the doctor and a few other people tell you, when I was diagnosed with Mount Sinai, I called them, my wife called them about 6 times just to update my case. And they said, finally the last lady said, listen, Mayor Giuliani does not want any correlation with any cancer or any illness from 9/11. So I stopped going there, and now I just started going back. So there's no way humanly possible that cancer stats can be accurate. It's impossible. I mean, everybody can sit there, the doctors up there, he can tell you, it's impossible. There's no way, because they didn't do it for 7 or 8 years. So how could you catch up?
But you are in the system.
But it's just like the fireman told you before, cancer, I actually left Manhattan to go down to Robert Wood Johnson, and that lady down there, I think Dr. Ursula, she's believing that cancer's definitely from there. But there's no, there's people that went 8 years, and if you have cancer, I had a week to live, I'm not going to go to Mount Sinai, I'm going to go to my oncologist. So you have a major problem with that.
Right, I do understand that. We're going to try to get the best information we can.
Well, that's my question. How is that possible to get that information
I
when
think I think a lot of these scientific articles are going to be very valuable that we're going to see in the next 6 months. Be a little patient. We're going to get
Arthur.
I just wanted, my name's Arthur Schwartz. I'm with Advocates for Justice, which is a public interest law firm that's actually organized a project organized to reach out to people in the community about compensation, and two of the communities we were reaching out to were the Lower East Side and Chinatown, which are not included, and we think it's important, and I won't make a speech here, but to do some correlation between the health information that the doctors have, and I think you'll see that the way the smoke drifted up, that Reed Street is really sort of not in line, and I'll give him my card and we can talk some more.
Please.
Hola, mi nombre es Rosa Espinosa.
Hi, my name is Rosa Espinosa.
Yo le quería hacer una pregunta. Yo tuve cáncer en el cervix en el 2007-2008.
I would like to ask you a question. I suffered from cervical cancer and diagnosed in both 2007 and 2008.
Yo sé que los doctores a mí me han dicho que el cáncer se ha desarrollado con tantos químicos que recibimos cuando trabajamos en la Torre Gemela.
And my medical providers have stated that the reason why I received that was because the reason why I'm suffering from cancer is because of the debris and toxins in ground zero.
Y posiblemente el cáncer de nuevo creo que ha vuelto a mí.
And I'm sorry, I think that the cancer has returned, is now active again.
Y quiero saber si aplico o no aplico.
And I would like to know if I am eligible or not for this compensation fund.
I'm really sorry to hear about your condition. At this point, cancer is not covered, but we are going to be looking at those issues. And if we add it, you will be able to apply. And, it's unfortunate that we can't give you the solace now of knowing that you could apply to the fund now. I wish we could. We're going to work on this very hard and very quickly so that people like you will be able to get into the fund if we can find the causal connections. So my heart goes out to you for your injury, and I wish we could do more. And then good luck to you. I hope they can help you.
Díganle que a partir de la fecha que después de que trabajé en el 911 se me han presentado muchas enfermedades, tales como el asma, la gastritis, y créanme lo que yo no he podido trabajar y ahorita estoy en un shelter por lo mismo que no he podido pagar.
Ever since I started working in Ground Zero, my health has deteriorated. I have suffered from asthma, from rhinitis. I can no longer work. Currently, I'm living in a shelter, and I cannot no longer provide for my family.
You can apply. You have asthma. You have other respiratory injuries. You apply to the fund. You will get compensation for those injuries. That's okay. We'll get you help in Spanish to make sure that you can file an application and that we will get you an award if you have those injuries. So please file.
Okay, pero compensación me dice que ellos necesitan que en la C4 pongan cáncer, los doctores, pero...
Right, so she's just saying, again, in terms of cancer and how it would need to be listed as a disability. That's what you're trying to
That's exactly right. But apply to the fund for all the others. Thank you very much.
Last two questions, guys.
Thank you, Ms. Birnbaum, for coming today. I was a responder with a camera in the pit for 9 months, so I saw the devastation. I took pictures. I certainly do, and about 20,000 others. Absolutely. That's correct. We've lost 1,024 respondents since 9/11. The incubation period for disease manifests itself usually in the 15 to 20 year points, which would bring far excess over 3,000 that we lost on that tragic day. My question is there any possibility that some of these benefits can be expedited so that it's not a restitution benefit, but a death benefit?
Well, what you're saying is people who have already died, if they can get the benefits quicker?
No, the people that are dying now and that they can get some sort of restitution before the 5-year mark, because so many people have, we've
Well,
lost
they will get something before the 5-year mark. It will. Everybody who applies within the 5 years will get a payment. Will not be their full payment, but they will get a payment.
There's been so much devastation.
And that will depend on what we have and what we can do on it. But everyone will get a payment who applies, who's eligible, who's approved. They will get some payments within the 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Last question.
Hi, ma'am. My second question to you is, on your PowerPoint presentation, you had on collateral 2 additional add-ons. The first one was for the 9/11 litigation, which I understood. The second one said the WTC treatment program. Can you clarify what that means?
That means that you won't get, that means for the medical reimbursement, you will not get medical reimbursement for those treatments. In other words, that was already given as part of Title I. There'll be no deduction for that.
Oh, okay.
It really means you just won't be able to recover.
Yeah, because it was on the collateral for,
Right.
under the
Yeah,
DCF.
I think that was a little misapplied.
Okay,
Next
thank
time
you
I
very
do
much.
it, I'll make it clear.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you, Rich. Let's thank the special master for coming out here tonight and answering all these questions. On behalf of PC37, the New York State Laborers, the Fealgood Foundation, and Sheila Birnbaum, we want to thank you for participating tonight as well, so thank you all.
Thank you all for coming.
Lastly, we want to thank the UFC for having us here tonight, and we look forward to doing this again. Thank you all again. Have a nice night.